Okay, so in this section, P6, we're going to talk about rational expressions. And a rational expression, I'll just say it's a polynomial divided by another polynomial. That's the definition of a rational expression. So a polynomial divided by another polynomial. So you might think of it like a fraction, right? But we have polynomials, so there might be variables and stuff. Well, one of the things we have, let me give you an example. So 3 over x plus 7. That is a rational expression. So in the numerator, I have 3, which you can consider 3 a polynomial. In the denominator, I have x plus 7, which you could consider that a polynomial. Well, the thing is, because we have a denominator, we have to restrict the values of x. Because now we have to say x cannot be negative 7 in this case, because that would make the denominator 0, and we're not going to let you divide by 0. So this bar, sometimes they call it the division bar, means division. Okay, and we're not going to let you divide by 0. So when we work with rational expressions, we have to keep that in mind. Hey, we've got this rational expression, 3 over x plus 7, but by the way, x can't be negative 7 because then we would be in a situation that's undefined. Okay, so the first thing they want us to do on this first example is they want us to find all the numbers that have to be excluded. So sometimes they'll call them excluded values. Sometimes they'll say restrict the domain, meaning the domain is what x can be, all the x values. And in our polynomials, normally x could be just any real number. But now we have the restriction. Okay, so let's look at this first one, a. We're looking at the denominator then. We're going to say x cannot be 2. Because if x is 2, then we're going to be dividing by 0, and that's what we can't have. Now the next one, we're looking at the denominator. Because in this example, we're finding all numbers that must be excluded. Okay. So we're saying, when does x squared minus 1 equals 0? When does that happen? Well, there's actually 2 times. X cannot be negative 1 and x cannot be 1. Because if you put in a negative 1 and square it, you'd have 1 minus 1, which is 0. And if you put in 1 squared minus 1, that would equal 0. So we can't have these things. All right. You're looking at the denominator and you're saying, when does that equal 0? So now we're going to look at this denominator. We have x squared plus 3x minus 18. When does that equal 0? That's the question, because those are the values we can't have. Well, this is a trinomial and it factors. Factors into x plus 6 and x minus 3. Does that equal 0? Now, we haven't really talked about equations with polynomials yet, but that's what we're doing. We're solving this. When does that equal 0? Well, to find that, you look at each factor. So when does x plus 6 equal 0? Because we don't want that. And when does x minus 3 equal 0? Because we don't want that. See, if you had 0 here, 0 times whatever would be 0. But if you had 0 here, 0 times whatever would be 0. Okay. So here we're going to say x cannot be negative 6, and here we're going to say x cannot be 3. Those would be the excluded values. Okay. Now you'll catch on more to this as we work with the rational expressions.